All right, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is going to be class number 11th discourse, sitting right now, chapter 43 in this 11th discourse. It's chapter 43. 43 is the number of the chapter in the entire book. And this is really exciting because we're moving. I'm intensely waiting to conclusion of chapter 45. As we've discussed earlier, that's going to be like a completion of an entire super subject, the first phase of this entire study that we've been doing in the last 2 years, close to 2 years, and 200 and something like 20 classes. So here we go. Chapter 43. It says in the Ein Sof, that the infinite light. So based on the idea that we discussed earlier, how Chachma is higher than Bina, and Chachma has an experience of the essence, versus Bina is only an interpretation that comes through the Chitzonius, and the essence of the experience of Chachma, even on the lowest levels of Chachma, is a certain intake of reality, and not its intellectual experience, and the intellectual excitement going on over here. Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm sorry for that interruption. It seems like it like kind of the internet connection kind of went out, at least externally. So I'm back on. So if it was silent for a while, this is all that it was. So I hope you're staying with me. In any case, so what is the kiruv? What is the closeness? So he's going to give a few examples of the closeness. What is closeness? He's going to give three examples of close, and what it both, and he's going to use it both in a metaphor, and he's going to apply it also to above. By way of analogy, Chacham Gado, when a great scholar, when he speaks to an average person, quite a lot. The best thing I can think of is a Rebbe. Like you say, that, the Rebbe showed kiruv to somebody. The Rebbe is sitting with the Farbrengen with thousands of Hasidim. And suddenly the Rebbe like takes the time to speak to a certain individual, calls him up and speaks to him. Okay, calls him up, you can say he came closer to him, but it's like you're showing kiruv to someone means that you're showing them that you have time for them, and you spend time talking to them. You're giving attention. That's the idea. And and a lot of times when you feel distant from someone is if you meet them and you see that they cut the conversation very brief, you feel distant. But if they spend an extra few minutes talking to you, that's like just the fact that they spoke a lot longer. It's not so much the fact that they spoke more words, it's the fact that they spend time is showing closeness. The fact that they're not hurrying, they're not leaving, they're not saying, oh, I'm too busy for you. They're giving you the time of the day to be with them, to hear you out, or to speak to you. That itself is a closeness. When he speaks to an average person, a lot, that's called kiruv. This great person was Makarev and brought him close. He spoke to him a lot. So how are we going to apply that above? The fact that in Chachma, Hashem shines a lot of light. He illuminates. He's giving him a lot. In Bina, there's much less light. That's the first idea that we've been saying, that it's not only that, it's much more than that. But the first idea is still true. And in Chachma, there's a lot of light, and in Bina, there's much less light. And like we see in a person, in the initial flash of an idea, there is a very the light is very sharp of the concept, and when you start chewing on it and dismantling it or dissecting it, rather, is what I'm looking for. You start dissecting it, you lose some of that sharpness and that clarity. But now he's going to say that's one interpretation in closeness. The fact that someone talks to someone at greater length, that's close. And what's even more, like you say, I can't believe it. A guy gave me a half an hour of his time, right? Gave me an hour of his time, especially if this is a very, very, very important person. Now, another form of kiruv is that when the person is speaking to him, you feel that there's warmth, there's no coldness there. They're like really shining. You can see in their face, they're happy to speak to you. Their face is lit up. When he's showing him a face, an luminous face in his speech, sometimes a person can speak to someone else and he's like, his eyes are not focused on the other person. He's looking in another direction. He's looking at today's days, forget about it. You can look at your phone. You can be distracted. You're not looking. But even when you're looking, there's two types of looking. You can be looking like just looking externally, or you can like really be gazing at the person, looking into their eyes. You feel like there's a deep connection. When he speaks to him, he's with a beautiful countenance, with a smiling face. So that's another thing, and we're going to see how that applies to Chachma. That in Chachma Hashem is illuminating the inside of himself, is not just passing on information externally. He's illuminating. So we were learning earlier. Now, and then there's a third level in the kiruv. When you have two people, which have the same opinions and the same mindset. So that kind of a closeness when they are like-minded, that's called close. In their politics, whether that's in their general state of religiosity, or if they're in their in all aspects, have a conversation with one and have the same conversation with the other, because it's almost like you're continuing this kind of conversation with the same person. They think the same. They have the same opinions. The idea is two people that are close, if they both share the same father, like two brothers that were born from one father and mother. So their children are close to each other. But that's physically. This is physically. So is also intellect, for instance, is called father and mother. So people who share the same ideas, that means they have the same parents. Their emotional structure is based on the same intellectual concepts and ideas. They have the same chachma and bina. For example, people that study Hasidus have a certain appreciation and understanding of life, a Chabad approach, a chachma bina das approach, and therefore that we share the same parent spiritually, because we have the same intellectual foundations, which create a certain emotional makeup. That's why we say Hasidim are one family, because we all have the same. There's a certain closeness in ideas. Two people whose minds are equal in one thing. They're close. They're close one to the other, but in the brain of their intelligence. Now we're going to stand these three ideas, implying it to Chachma, how Chachma is close and Bina is considered far. Or what that means is, number one, there's a lot of light in Chachma, like we spoke earlier. That's even true in the lowest point of Chachma, which is what we called yesterday the external element of Chachma, which goes over to Bina. What's that? That's the rationale and the logic of Chachma. However, where it's all one point, as opposed to when it goes to Bina, when it starts to get broken up into all of its pieces. Like in the Nikud of Askal of Chachma, the idea is shining there with much more revelation. So when you're looking at the entire forest, you get to see a much bigger picture than when you're looking at one individual branch of one individual tree or one individual leaf. Right? So it's a whole, there's much more light. From the details that is in the Hasaga that is in the grasp. So too in Chachma, the light is shining in a revealed way, with greater abundance than from Bina. And this is the first idea of Kiruv closeness. That the person is speaking to you a lot. There's a lot of light, there's a lot of infusion. In our case, the Orein Sof is pumping its light in abundance into Chachma. But that's secondary to the higher idea. Now we're gonna raise it up to the main idea, which he's explaining, because in that it's not fundamentally different. In that it's just more and less. But here we're going to show that something that is fundamentally different than Chachma is that there's a certain aspect of the Orein Sof that's not going at all to Bina. It's not just less; it's not going over to Bina at all, and that is the inner light of Chachma. The light of the substance of the Orein Sof is not passing to Bina at all, because Bina is just a translation. Bina is already words. Bina is definitions, and Chachma is tapping the very neshama of it, the soul of it. And that's the real closeness. The real closeness is you feel that the person is allowing you to connect to their soul. You're seeing it in their face. You're seeing their eyes, that their soul is there. and the main closeness when he speaks to him, besaver upon him with a very gladdened or a radiant countenance. This is the revelation of the pnimius shemeir b'chachma, that is shining in chachma. It's the revelation of the inwardness that is shining in chachma, mashalamayla masaga, that which is utterly beyond grasping of bina. Like we said earlier, that even in the sichli, even in the intellectual elements of chachma, levad riboya oir, in addition to the abundance of light, shebasaga misalama, or that in the hasaga, in the grasping elements, the light gets hidden. In addition to the fact that there is more light, and once you're getting into you're getting into the nitty gritty of it, you're losing that light, starts getting crumbed down into small crumbs, and therefore you're losing a lot of that brightness. But in addition to that, what is shining in Chachma is the essence, which doesn't come at all into the comprehension and in the understanding. Let's. We want to start the parentheses, but it's a long parenthesis over here. And I think I'm going to just learn a little bit of it and then continue further and come back. This is what is going to, this idea that the continents, there's something that's coming through. When the physical example was when the person is spending time, not only is he talking a lot, but his face is glowing, which means he or she is really present in that conversation, and they're really opening up to you from a very deep place. So the same is also with the teacher and the student. If you listen to someone's recordings, you can hear all the words, not necessarily. And if they speak with neshama, they speak with soul, then you can get more than just the words, but you can get the energy flow as well. But it's unlike actually sitting at the class face to face, because when you're looking at your teacher, you're getting a certain luminance that is not carried over in their words and in their teaching. And that's why the sages say that it's very, very special to be able to learn from a teacher directly. Looking at the face of the mashpia. So looking at the face of the Rebbe, when the Rebbe said the Maimer by the Farbrengen or things, something like that, there's nothing that can substitute that. With this one is receiving from the essence of the wisdom of the teacher, that is not arriving, it is not being extended, in the light of the influence that he is transmitting to him in his words and in his teaching. There's a certain light of the subject that looking face to face, you're getting it. It's just the countenance of the person is conveying it, not their words, not the actual transmission. And this is why Rabbi said, the great author of the Mishnah said, this that I am sharper more than my friends. As we can see, Rabbi was the one who had many colleagues, great, and yet he was the one who authored the Mishnah, compiled something that no one else did before him. That's because he excelled past all of his friends. He says, my friend did not merit to see the great sage Rabbi Meir. And I saw Rabbi Meir. I merited, meaning I saw Rabbi Meir. And it's interesting. Rabbi says, I didn't even see his face. I saw his back. And if I once saw Rabbi Meir, but only his back, had I seen Rabbi Meir's face, it would have been like, whoa, on a whole different level. And that's why the Jerusalem Talmud says, anybody who repeats over a teaching from his fellow, is when you're giving over, let's say, a teaching of one of the sages or the rabbis, if you know the person, you should visualize that person as if he's standing in front of you. Because when you're visualizing that person, if you're actually picturing the image of that individual while you're giving over a teaching of them, then you as a teacher now are plugging into your teacher's inner light and thereby conveying that to your students. There's a certain enhancement in the teaching you're giving over to your students that is lacking if you're just giving over their ideas of your teacher, but not the deeper light of your teacher is not coming through because you yourself are not seeing it. So it's very, very important that someone, when he teaches, to see his teacher in his mind. Or when you're learning yourself, even not giving over. When you're learning yourself something that your teacher said, every time, in our case, as our Rebbe is our Rebbe to me, right, and or whoever your Rebbe is, but if you is that it is when you're giving over a sikha, or even giving over, you're learning it. For a moment, close your eyes and visualize the Rebbe saying it, and then from there, your connection and understanding of it is going to be deeper. Stated elsewhere. And we can also say b'chachma, the inyan mari panim, when in chachma, when it says the face of the Or Ein Sof, what does this mean? It's the revelation of the innermost and the essence of the Or Ein Sof. Yeah, let's continue without skipping the parentheses. It's flowing already. It's going. Let's go with it. This is a deeper meaning in one of the blessings of the Kohanim. It says, Yod Hashem panav elecha. God should shine His face upon you. He should shine His countenance. It means that to us, God shouldn't just give us influence, but He should give us Himself in that influence. We should feel His warmth, His warm radiance shining upon us. The Isa Medrash Rabbah, the Midrash Rabbah says, Kamoda Amar, like it says, in your light, we will see light. In your light, we will see light. What is this referring to? The Midrash is saying, what does it mean? Yar Hashem panav elecha. God should shine His face. Like it says, the Midrash associates with another verse, in your light, we will see light. The Piddush, ba'orcha hu ora atzmi. Ba'orcha, in your light, means in your essence of your light. Because there's two types of light. There is the external element of the light, like we were learning earlier, that when Chachma passes on to Bina, it's giving over the logic of it, which is the external of it, not the initial intake or inlay of the essence of the idea that is illuminating into the Chachma is not passing over to Bina. But Ba'orcha over here means the deeper light. The Mashra of Tchila, because if you look at that verse, I think it's a verse in Psalms, it says, Ki imcha makar chayim. With you, God. Yeah, it's a verse in Psalms. It says, Ki imcha, with you, makar chayim is the source of life. And then it continues, Ba'orcha, in your light, nira or we will see light. So he's saying this is referring to these two levels. The level of Chachma that goes over to Bina is called Makar Chayim, the source of life. Because it's the source for what continues. From the external element of Chachma, of wisdom, goes over to Bina. Bina produces the emotions, and the emotions are the source of the 6 days of creation, which is the source of all of the existence, all of the created reality. But where is it starting from? From the external of Chachma. And that's called the Makar Chayim, source of life. And that is not you. That's why the verse says interesting. Ki imcha, it's with you. Because it's an external ray that is canceled in you. It's as if, to you itself, it's as if that ray is absolutely nothing. Like a tiny little, if you take a tiny little crumb of sand, one little sand thing, and put it on the sun, and it has it's as if the sun became heavier because this little piece of sand. The truth is, it did, but in for all practical purposes, it's irrelevant. So we say that the entire light that illuminates and gives life to all the worlds, the Makar Chayim, the source of life, is imchas, totally canceled in God, because it's not the essence; it's only a radiance. But we're continuing and saying, "Be archa in your light." That's the essence. We will see light. Why? Because God gave us the Torah. The Torah is not part of creation. Torah is higher than creation. The Torah is Chachma. Which element of Chachma? Creation is nibbling on the external element of Chachma. Creation, we mean all of creation, all the spiritual worlds and the angels and celestial beings and all of that with all the myriads, the entire universe and everything. It's all only the external. It's imcha, it's with you. But ba'orcha, your light, which is ba'or panecha nasata lanu teiras Hashem Elokeinu teiras chayim, with the light of the continents, you gave us your Torah, which Torah is the essence of Chachma. Oh, now we're getting the substance of God. That's the external light that's drawn to support the world. That comes through the evolution of Ilah v'Alul, cause and effect, like we learned earlier. That's with you. It's not you. Oh, behold it. What do you mean? How can we say it's with you? It's everything is God. What do you mean it's coming from as if there's something other than God? Imcha with you. Everything is from you. It says so in the verse. Why are we saying it? It's with you as the source of life, as if God has something else other than himself that's the source of life. So he explains, this is to indicate. The source of life is, of course, it's coming from God, but it's such a nether nothing that it's utterly nullified to. It's only an external ray. But in your light, this is the essential light. God will illuminate his face to you. What does it mean to illuminate his face? This is that he's drawing, he's downloading, he's transmitting his essence. And that's coming to us through the Torah. The ba'or panecha, like we say, ba'or panecha, the light of the continents, the satalana, you gave us Torah Chayim, the Torah of life. Because Torah emanates from Chachma. Which level of Chachma? The internal element of Chachma. We spoke yesterday, the oil of Chachma, not the water of Chachma. Shemeir shama atzmi, with the essence light. Idra Rabbi Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel Apasuk Isa, and Idra, which is Zohar, it says Ba'or Pnei, a certain section of Zohar, it says Ba'or Pnei Melachayim, that where it says on those words, on the light Pnei Melachayim, of the face of the living God, not the external Makar Chayim, but the internal element of the living God. What does it say in the Zohar? And Trein Tapuchim, these are the two cheeks, the two apples, which means the cheeks of the face, which are when a person is really radiating to you, they're showing love and kindness and real pleasure that you're with them. You can see it on their cheeks, that the cheeks become rosy. Shazau, can you imagine that? The cheeks of the Ein Sof. Shazau Tikkun Azayin, which is the seventh Tikkun. There's 13 Tikkunim, 13 strands of the beard in God's face. But even though we say 13 strands of the beard, it really refers to the space in the face where the beard is located. And we know that the beard, the cheeks are not covered with hair. And that's called the seventh tikkun. That's the luminance of the face, not blocked by here, which means it's not blocked by any tzimtzumim, by any contractions. And over there, the inner light shines. And that's called emes, truth. And that's what Torah is. Torah is emes. That's the inner, that's where like at the Gemara, we learned earlier that Rabbi Avuhu, when he got when he had a luminance, his face lit up. It's primarily seen in the cheeks. The chachma of a person, Torah Panav, lights up his face. And in Idra it says that this is what it means, that Hashem will shine his countenance to you. When that is that deep level of the Keter, which is the 13 attributes are all in Keter, is shining into the Ze'er Anpin, which is the human man, which is the divine man. When it in its cheeks is shining this higher light, then the Ze'er Anpin is illuminated by this deep light. This is Yar Hashem Panav Elach. Hashem is shining his face to us. But Al Kapanim, after what is this teaching us? This is the second explanation of what does it mean to be shining in a close proximity. In addition to the person spending time with you, sharing a lot of information, they're also giving their inner light and inner self into that bond, into that connection. And that's a deeper element of Chachma. And then there's finally the third element of Chachma, which we're going to leave in tomorrow's class, the concept of being light to mind. Let's just learn the first lines of it, and then we're going to maybe read-chew it again tomorrow. We finished the parentheses. Here we go. The third element of kiruv is two people that are like-minded. Is when this is going to be even a higher level. They think alike. Now, to be able to think alike, be like-minded to the Or Ein Sof, to have the same mind like the Or Ein Sof, like God, to have the same perspective like the Or Ein Sof. Chachma has the same perspective, because remember we're learning that in Chachma the Das Elyon shines in Chachma, the higher Das shines in Chachma. However, to be considered like-minded, he's going to say something interesting, that everything is over here is interesting. He says something which is special, is that is, everything is special, I'm sorry, but say something that is exciting me right now, okay. That this like-mindedness of Chachma is primarily in the upper realm of Chachma, where Chachma is exposed, where Chachma sees the Or Ein Sof. As long as it's not seeing it, it's only receiving it by allowing it to come in, but not through the visual. Remember, we discussed the difference between the upper element of Chachma, the lower element of Chachma. You can't call that experience like-minded. But where there is Riyah, where there is vision, where Chachma sees the Or Ein Sof and sees it as it is, that's the like-mindedness. This is that the Or Ein Sof, where we know no thought can grasp him. So Bina and any type of grasping can't even begin to explore this place. Meir b'b'chenes ha'chachma shines in chachma. Shezeu b'chenes hariyah the chachma. This is the higher element of chachma, the vision of chachma. Shu hariyah. This is when you're seeing be'etzem u'mehus hadavar, into the essence and into the substance of the manner. Yeah, chulu. So it comes out, he explained that the Or Ein Sof is shining in chachma on three levels, and these three levels correspond to the three dimensions of Chachma that we spoke earlier. The lowest dimension of Chachma is what Chachma transmits to Bina. That's the sichli of the Chachma. That's already the intellectual point. That's the very tail end of the Chachma. He called it earlier the chitzonius of Chachma. Even over there is Chachma, the Or Ein Sof is shining close, and Bina shining far. There, the example is a person speaking a lot to somebody versus a short 2-minute conversation. In Bina, it's short and quick, brief, but in Chachma, it's a lot. Even though Chachma is brief and Bina is elaborate, but in terms of God, the light shining into Chachma, he's giving abundant download into Chachma, and Bina much less. That's even on the tail end of Chachma. On the higher level of Chachma, where Chachma has the Hanachas sichlis, he calls it, the intake of the idea into Chachma, but not yet intellectual, but not as high as Riyah, but the lower elements, the Netzachod Yesod element of Chachma, as we discussed earlier, that element of Chachma is the idea that the illuminance, the radiant face is shining into Chachma. And the highest element is that Chachma is like-minded to the Or Ein Sof. That's in the upper spheres of Chachma, probably the Chabad and maybe even the Chagas of Chachma, the Chesed Gvur Teferes of Chachma. On those levels, there is the inyan of Riyah, of vision, and there, where in that level, Chachma is like-minded to the Or Ein Sof. All right. Very good. Let's continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow.